Story time. I was in the kitchen with my mom the other day and I had a towel in the middle of the kitchen floor, along with a bowl partially full with water. I got a leak in my ceiling, so spirits aren't very high at the moment. Mom goes on to tell me these stories about when I was a kid. As I'm listening, in the back of my head, I'm like, how did we go from leaky roof to childhood adventures? They are so far apart. At some point in the conversation, she asked, do I remember when her basement was flooded? I do, but you know, the memory's kind of fuzzy. So as I'm waiting for her to elaborate, she starts to walk out. So I'm like, is that it? She says, yeah, you were asleep on your bed, just floating. She's still walking away, by the way. I think what I was supposed to get from that was perspective. My room was in the basement during my childhood, and during that flood, it was like 2-3 feet of water in the basement. I was asleep. I was having a really good dream though. While I woke up disappointed, I wasn't exactly on a really cool island with an amazing waterfall. I was pleasantly surprised. I paid $0 for a really awesome waterbed. As a kid, I'm not even sure how I forgot. Probably one of the coolest and most fun things that happened. As an adult, certainly not the way you would want to start your day off. Sensei Mom, it's gonna be her new nickname. Today's lentil and rice recipe is better known as a Middle Eastern dish called Mujadara. This dish is really only 3 main ingredients: rice, lentils, and onions. In this particular recipe, everything else are add-ins from me that I really think takes this dish to like a whole nother comfort level. And believe it or not, you can take this meal a few different avenues to meet your needs. From the beginning of this recipe, you see me do a brine for the lentils. I learned that if you soaked green or brown lentils in this brine, it could potentially help keep the skins on as they cook. The real start of the recipe is us caramelizing the onions. And the top key difference between good and great caramelized onions is patience. I guess you kind of also have to have a little bit of like this robotic nature to stir every 2 to 3 minutes. Other notable considerations: the way you cut your onions, uniform slices, a heavy bottom skillet, preferably with a lighter color interior if you could, and medium-low heat. Notice today's onions were cut slightly differently than we normally do. We got the top off, then we spun it, we got the bottom off, then we did a quarter turn, and then no knife should sound like that. The heavy bottom skillet is going to help with even cooking. And if you have a lighter interior, you could see the brown bits starting to form much better than if you have something that's like dark, like a cast iron skillet, for example. And seeing those brown bits at the bottom kind of lets you know that it's a good time to stir. I'm really getting my exercise in today. Anybody else use their hands when they talk? The heat I recommended was medium low, and that's because it's so much easier to monitor, reducing your risk of basically burnt onions. And the harsh truth is that caramelizing takes time, but you could cut this recipe into half the amount of time in 2 different ways. You could go for a slight caramelized version and make your onions a bit more charred and crispy. Cook them for about 5 minutes on a higher heat, then proceed with the rest of the recipe. That's option 1. But option 2, you can use 2 different pots. Get the onions going in one and start the lentils and rice in another, combined at the end. The downside to the second option is now you gotta call it 2-pot lentil and rice recipe. I guess 2 pots isn't that bad to wash though, right? Last thing on the onions, you don't need to separate them in half. I do that because I love to use them as a topping. Sometimes I'll take them to the oven to get them a bit crispy as I finish up the rest of the recipe on the stove. It is worth it. Yeah. Yep. I'm not excited, you're excited. Our next step is to get our spices directly into the skillet to give it a nice toast. This helps deepen the flavor and just drive those aromatics. Cumin seems to be the most traditional spice added in here. Everything else I added for either a health benefit or a better flavor composition. And I just really like garlic. So Before getting our rice in right after, you saw me add tomato sauce. My preference is that I use tomato paste, so you might see that change in the written version of the recipe. It was just as yummy though. Because I had tomato sauce though, I kind of compensated with the amount of veggie stock I needed to not overshoot those liquids. For my folks who are tomato sensitive or acid sensitive or possibly just don't have any on hand, you can completely omit the tomato sauce or tomato in general. So that also means the paste. I won't steer you wrong, you still get a really good taste. Brown rice, white rice, wild rice. That was kind of a tongue twister. Any of these could be used with not too much attention on how much water or veggie stock you use. Let me explain. Most rice ratios are between 1.5 to 2 parts water and 1 part rice. As for lentils, the ratios doesn't matter because you could always just drain the water once the lentils get nice and tender. With that being said, I still like to keep my lentil ratios very similar to rice ratios. So if you're experimenting with different rice or even different lentils, I would look at the cook time between each and start whichever one has the longest cook time, then toss the other one in when you have that window of cook time you need necessary to finish it off. Okay, for my visual learners like myself, hypothetically, if you have rice that takes 10 minutes to cook and your lentils take 20 minutes to cook, I would start my lentils with a 20-minute timer. And when there's 10 minutes left on the timer, add my rice in. Did that help? For this recipe, head on over to my website, makeitdairyfree.com, where you can also print it, or check out the link in the description below. Don't forget to check out my membership program and my other socials, and thank you so much for watching. Till next Sunday, believe in good. Peace.